Can you check YouTube for me, baby? Hey, everybody on YouTube. I take it that you guys can see me and hear me now. Because when I look at the mic, I think everybody can hear me and see me. Production is such a job, man. It's such a job. You waiting for the adverts, are you? Okay, perfect. Hey, everybody, we've done the sound check on YouTube. I think you guys can hear me now. Something that we were struggling with earlier. Now we need to add the people on TikTok. All right. So yeah, I don't think the people on TikTok can hear me. Can they? Yeah. Sorry, YouTube guys. I'm trying to do like a dual stream, but sometimes it needs like different kinds of like audio settings and stuff, which can be a bit of a pain. So yeah, so we're now live on YouTube. The only thing that's left that I'm trying to find is this. Yeah, all right. Thanks a lot, guys. Really sorry to the YouTube guys who had to watch like 2 straight minutes of me talking into a mic and not hearing anything. So yeah, I know there's like been like a lot going on over the weekend. Especially following the TikTok live we did on Saturday. So I know a lot of people have got like a lot of questions and stuff. Unfortunately, yesterday I was making my debut in the rugby's equivalent of the Premier League. So it's something called the Betfred Super League. That's rugby league. So I had that happening. So I had to go down to Leeds for that and to cover that game. So I could only respond like in between, like in bits and pieces. But yeah, a lot of stories coming out over the weekend. Some of them my fault. Let me just. So yeah. So anyway, so like with these Q and A's, what I do is just take questions and stuff. So what I want to do as well is I want to take this live chat and undock it. I'll undock that live chat. Great. How do I get the YouTube questions here as well? I want to move the chat only to here. Just give me a moment. Okay. Yeah, this works. Okay, moves art. I think I've addressed that here before though. The video of my testimony at the Commission of Inquiry is still live, I think, on the ZBC YouTube. So it's still there. So I'd always say it's best to watch that video in full. The challenge is almost always that people form their basis of the Herald's article and the Chronicle that said, I said nobody was pew-pewed by soldiers, which isn't what I said if you listen to the entire thing. There were 6 people that were gunned down that day. I was only present where 1 person was gunned down. So people say that it's their impression of it. People that watch it don't say that. So it's one of those where I've addressed it so many times to the point that I say, okay, the best advice I'd give is go and watch it. Watch the entire testimony and pick out the elements that you think are false, and we'll take it up from there. But otherwise, that's not the case. I've narrated many times, and I've also always said to people, if you following the commission itself, President Motlanthe released a report, right? So after every commission of inquiry, there's a report. If President Motlanthe thought I was lying, he would have mentioned it in the report that he thought I was lying, and there would have been consequences for that. If anything, the last time we spoke, he kind of did ask me that, following the testimony, can you supply evidence to back up what you're saying? And he did remind me that let me remind you that if you don't submit that evidence or it doesn't tally with what you're saying, there'll be consequences for that. I did that. There was neither. So that's that. Brighton Tandy, are you a ZANU project, as some people say? Not anybody's project, mate. I'm not anybody's project, but I'll say one thing. I think it's a very pedestrian approach to thinking by a lot of people that anybody or anyone could be anybody's project. Because ZANU-PF is concerned with the business of remaining in power. It's not concerned with running people and having projects and having this and that. They want to stay in power, and that's just how they'll do it. They've got vehicles and tools that they'll use, but it would be incredibly wasteful for them to take a journalist and say, you know what, we're going to make you a project. Like, what would be in it for them? And it's the same when people like say, oh, by the way, Maynard, X and X is a diversion, or the government is investing in diversions, or this and that. ZANU-PF really doesn't have, they don't care to that level what people generally think. They are in the business of trying to extend their rule on power. They will do that first by appealing to their own voters. You're seeing them doing it now. I mean, Tungwara is going around the country giving bicycles, maize, soap, cooking oil, and those things. Those are things that matter to them. What people say on Twitter about them doesn't really matter. And if I was a project for them, I'd be like a very bad project, right? Dug Up has now been a thing for like just a year and a month now. Actually, a year and 2 months since our very first story. And there's never been a single story about the opposition there. It's always been stories about ZANU-PF, corruption, etc., theft, and so forth. I'm sure at some point they'd look at it and think, hey, dude, you owe us a little bit of something. So what I can't do, Brighton, is I can explain things to people, but I can't understand things for them, right? So I can explain what I think is happening. I can give you a story when a story is happening. If I've got the time, I'll do it. But I can never understand the story for people. And obviously there's always this obsession. I think I said in one of my tweets today, the obsession with engaging the source and not the actual material itself. So nobody has to like me, right? I am not money. You really don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with anything that I say. You don't have to disagree with anything. Like, personally, as a person, you don't even have to appreciate me. But if your pants fall down and I tell you that brugo rakora dona, if your first word is but you say because you want a barika, that's going to be your loss. You're going to move around naked. So when information comes, I suppose you can want to interrogate the integrity of the source, but ultimately, if it's 12 o'clock, it's going to be 12 o'clock, regardless of whether a Muslim person says it, whether a Jewish person says it, whether a British person says it, or someone that you don't like says it. So those things, for instance, can't be, they're not determined by who says it, right? In this particular case, this is coming out a lot since that live video we did on TikTok talking about that audio and about Chamisa and the Mnangagwa family and the relationships that they have and the contacts that they have. Something that he doesn't deny, by the way, Chamisa. And I did say at the time that, well, there's like a 10-minute audio recording call that was leaked. And that was leaked a long time ago, that audio call. I've listened to it, right? And I think I made reference to it in that conversation that I've listened to the audio clip. After that, Jealous Mawara, I think, released 20 seconds of that clip. And then later on, I think he released 60 seconds. I personally would not release phone calls between third parties for legal reasons. One, I'm a registered member of the National Union of Journalists in the UK. I have a press card. I'm a practicing reporter. I have to abide by the IPSO code as it stands, and it doesn't allow me to reveal, to leak calls between third parties. If I was part of the phone call, I would leak it. I don't have a problem with the people that have leaked it. It's a different brand of journalism to the one that I practice. But you'd note that Hopo didn't leak the same audio. He made reference to it, right? And there are specific legal reasons why he wouldn't have done that. But nonetheless, I've spoken about Chamisa and that audio for quite a while. I've always made reference of the fact that I know about it. I know the contents of what is in that audio. The response has been to say, let's go back to 2018 Maynard. What did you say at the Commission of Inquiry? Let's go back to 2022 Maynard. You had a disagreement with your wife. Maynard, let's go to this and that. You beat up your wife. Maynard, let's. And I've said, okay, just to help out so that the conversation can move forward. I am everything that you say I am. It's true, right? Let's just take that apart. Can we focus on the actual story that is being discussed? So that was in reference to Brighton, where it said, "Are you a ZANU-PF project?" And I think it's okay to say every reader should conclude what they think I am, and that's fair, because I think ultimately it doesn't matter who I am. I think our journalism in Zimbabwe suffers from this persistent belief that it should be an ideal, it should be like a conviction, right? In the UK, it's not like that, right? The Daily Mirror will write vote Labour straight up as a headline on election day. Journalists are allowed to be very, very partisan in the UK. Journalists have to be objective. Objectivity is not a matter of lifestyle. Objectivity is a matter of output. So I am objective in my output. I'll give you a very, very good example. I have worked at Newcastle United. I've worked at Chelsea. I've worked at Brentford, right, in the Premier League. I am not a supporter of any of those clubs. But when I'm working there, I support them in my output. So objectivity in journalism is not, Maynard, which political party do you support? Objectivity in journalism is in your output, Maynard. Have you been fair? Have you allowed both sides a chance to be heard, etc., right? So I hope that answers you. I need to go to, there's quite a couple of other moves out. I watched you live and it seems like you suggested the soldiers were not in the wrong. I suggest you just watch it again. I think it's easier because it's not what I suggested at all. But I know that a lot of people were offended by the fact that I spoke about protesters setting fire to cars, stoning us journalists, which was like, I mean, I streamed that thing live on my Facebook, so it's still there, right? Should I have not said that? No. I said what happened from the time I arrived up until the time I left. And if that's the impression that you got, I'd encourage you to watch it again. But if you watch that again and you still have that impression, then we'll agree to disagree on this is the impression you had, and then that's fine, you know. Because really and truly, at some point, I have long gone past that, believe me. I have long gone past that moment of disagreeing or debating with people. Like, for instance, you would say you watched the testimony live, right? I streamed it live on the streets. I didn't need to draw conclusions about what was happening from watching somebody else. I was there. When the army deployed and every single journalist ran for cover, there were 3 of us that were left. There was a guy from Capital FM who later off ran away because he didn't have a press bib, so soldiers started beating him up. There was a guy from ENCA, and there was me. And towards the end, it was just me and that guy. We were the only ones that followed from Net 1 building all the way to Copacabana, right? There were gunshots ringing in the air. There was chaos. Everything that happened there, I was on the ground. I wasn't reporting as an analyst. I wasn't watching another video. So I would always say, please go and watch the live stream. Then go and watch the testimony itself. Like I said, I think part of it goes back to how the Chronicle and the Herald and part of the ZBC ran their headlines that evening, which is very different to how New Zimbabwe and Nyanda Radio ran their headlines. I think the only publication that ran the headline very consistent to what I'd said was actually IOL, Journalistic Marom. So there's that. And I mean, after that, I can't convince you, and it's difficult to expand any more energy trying to convince anyone about it. So Makanaki on TikTok says a political party has a primary responsibility to stay afloat. Yeah, it does. I mean, I agree with you. So one misconception that people have about whatever my contributions have been regarding the whole audio with Chamisa and MDCT people is that supposedly I say there's something wrong with it. I don't, right? I just gave people context in terms of what happens. I don't have a problem with Chamisa meeting the Mnangagwa family, which he has consistently done since 2018, right? And Chamisa and Mnangagwa did have a relationship prior to the coup as well. They were very close. So I definitely get that. When they became presidential opponents, there was a bit of bad blood and this and that, but that quickly died down. There were overtures made for a GNU just after the coup in 2017. They were made again in January 2018. By that time, Chienga was now sick. And those conversations persisted even post-August 2018. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think people are offended with the details of the meeting. And I think there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there where it is so appalling to them that the only sensible reaction is to go after Maynard or go after Hopewell or go after Jelas Mawarire. I've said, right, from the start, I have known about that call since last year. 2025 is the very first time that I became aware of that phone call as a context. Listen to it. I reached out to the CCC. I reached out to Chamisa, right? Sent messages to his number, sent messages to his spokesperson, Promise Mkwananzi. Sent messages to Gift Ostalos. Ostalos directed me back to Promise. Having done that, I then received a call from my nephew, who is a principal funder of the things that Chamisa does, probably one of his biggest funders. And he's my nephew by blood. Literally, his mother and my father are brother and sister. Said to me, Sekuru, ndakumbirwa kunzi you can do your story, but right now, there's a lot happening in the opposition, and this can serve as a dagger, and it can really divert a lot of things. And can we have time? You can do your story much later on. And this is like right almost in the infants of Dagap. This should have been around June last year, I think. It wasn't the first time that we had done a story where you do a story, you send questions, people ask for time. I think plenty of times, sometimes I've hinted at stories that we're doing, like the Net 1 where we're doing a story, but somebody asks for time, or we look at it and think, well, it's not contemporary at the minute, which is what journalism is, right? In journalism, something that we call a gatekeeping process. And it involves looking at a story, thinking, is this the correct time to release it? Is this the most impactful time to release it? What could be the consequences of releasing that story? A good example is when Chamisa first went to the USA. We knew that 2 months before that. And I reached out again to Promise Mkwananzi. Hey, this is what I know. This is what your boss paid. These are the type of visas. This is the kind of money that was moved to the US. In light of the political party that he leads, these are my questions, A, B, C, D. And Promise said, look, I want to answer you, but I can't. Let me give you the new number he's now using and ask him yourself. And I did that. Asked Nelson, this is what I have, A, B, C, D. The response thereafter was different in misery. Came and circled back and said, look, do you mind? Because if you release the story now, it has the capacity to make it look like he has fled his followers, etc. They even brought up the issue of Ivan. You saw what happened with Ivan when he left during this flag. Can you hang on to your story? And what we will do is we will now give you straight answers a little bit later. And then you can do your story. I said to them, okay, that's fair. I mean, I'm not running my story today, but I'm getting greater access to get better answers. Sadly, 6-7 weeks down the line, the story was then picked up on by other journalists that I don't even have like relationships with. And that story then eventually came out. It didn't come out in exactly in the way that I knew it had come out. None of the stuff that I had, facts, figures, dates, times, bank transfers, none of that came out, right? Because there were questions surrounding that I needed answers regarding, okay, so how did he become in possession of this kind of money? You know, this money that is moved from this bank to Bank of America, it's supporting his application. Where did these funds come from? That was more the angle of my story. That never came out. After the whole issue of him going to the USA came out, I then felt like, well, there's no need pursuing this story because it's not contemporary anymore, right? At the time, it's not contemporary, so we've moved on. And that happens a lot in at least the journalism that I practice. It's not unusual to get people to come to you. What's then just happened now is I was live on Saturday and it came up, right? And I mentioned the issue of that audio because since I had made contact with them, that audio is kind of circulated a little bit, that 20-second clip. So I didn't mention that there's a clip that exists, yeah. And I have the 10-minute clip where Chamisa is speaking to Auxilium Mnangagwa via proxy, via Benson Mneri. I think straight after that, by the time I went to Twitter, I then had a certain individual who was straight, like really into me like that. Off the back of me just responding to Marco Aruzwisha and telling him to say, look, don't ignore this guy. That became what you saw. And look, naturally, when people either lie about you or attack you, you will defend yourself, right? And that entire phone call became the subject of responses. So Jelas Mawere then posted a 1-minute clip on top of the 20-second clip that he had released. I did respond to it, that I know that it's only a minute's clip. There could be more that they could post. I don't know why they're not posting it since they've already decided to post it. Someone then asked, because I think when Jelas was explaining, he explained. This is how it happened, by the way. Benson Mneri is Auxilia Mnangagwa's top aide, right? You'd remember him from Hot Plate Grill House. Ben Mneri pretty much runs almost all of Auxilia's businesses, all of her interests. If you want anything to do with Auxilia and you need help, you go to Ben Mneri. Ben Mneri had contact with Nelson Chamisa with regards to establishing some form of a deal, making him a prime minister or a GNU, something of that sort. Chamisa was hesitant to speak to Mai Mnangagwa or to speak to Emmerson Mnangagwa at first. They then said, well, you can send Emizatis. Chamisa did not want to send Emizatis from his party. He then asked Hope Hall to go. Hope Chingono then went to meet these guys on behalf of Nelson Chamisa. George Charamba and Matigari, they've tweeted about this before, about Hope Hall meeting Ben Mneri and saying, you guys don't know about this meeting, etc. That meeting was to discuss what had happened with Chamisa and these guys. Hope Hall went back. The offer was that we'll make a GNU and we'll make you the prime minister. Chamisa was open to being made prime minister, but wasn't open to a GNU. And told Hopo not to tell anybody. And Chamisa didn't want people from his party knowing at the time, because he said, look what had happened with Monzora. If we involve the party and there's power involved, running dogs will come. Hopo then went to consult with the late Alex Magaisa. Say, look, this is what's on the table. And Magaisa said to Hopo, that would be unlawful. That would be unconstitutional. There's no provision for a prime minister in the constitution. To introduce such a provision, you may likely need a referendum, and there would be a problem. And in those conversations, that's when Hope was then also realizing that there was these hunches towards extending, I think first used to be extending the life of parliament beyond 2028 and into much later, right? When Chamisa found out that Hope had spoken to Alex, that's when that phone call happened, where Chamisa is then saying, I no longer want Hope as the go-between between me and Anamai Mnangagwa, because there's one thing said and then it's misconstrued on the other side. That was the context of that phone call itself. We now know that the life of parliament will be extended. We now know that Emmerson Mnangagwa will be in power post-2028, barring a coup, because that's what he's trying to do, right? We'll get later into how, on Saturday we spoke about how Chienga wasn't taking action, on how Chienga for the first time is actually now taking steps to fight that amendment bill. I don't know if it's a little too late, but he has started to fight it, something that Chienga hadn't been doing for a very long time. So following from that conversation and submissions, that is when I woke up and there was a lot of the stuff that was buzzing off. And it was wild. I think to a point where at some point yesterday I had to switch off my phone because, like I said, I was shooting in the rugby league yesterday. And the Super League that I was shooting in is the equivalent of the Premier League, but in rugby league. So it was a very big game. It was my first time shooting in rugby league. And I've always explained here on Dug Up that we don't make anything from this, right? This TikTok as it is for now is sitting on 0.04 cents, right? That's how little it's made so far. And we've been here for 22 minutes. At best, it will end at like 50 cents. YouTube will be lucky if we get $30, right? So I have bills, I have responsibilities, I've got things to do. So my journalism, right, my photojournalism comes first, because unbeknown to many, I actually am a real journalist in the UK, which is why I've worked Daily Mirror, Daily Star, Daily Express, Daily Examiner, which is why you see me in the Premier League, in the Champions League, in the Championship. That's actually my job. It's a version of journalism. We call it photojournalism, but I studied journalism in all its forms. So at the time, I got to a point where I had to like mute because there were just like so many things coming in. But none of them were, I'm yet to encounter a lot of questions regarding what was the story. It's been a lot more of, let's go back to 2018, let's go back to 2022, or let's go back to your days with Bushiri, or let's go to this and that. And we've gotten to a point where I've said, okay, whatever it is you believe about 2018, it's cool. I'm okay with that. I don't practice journalism to convince anybody or to make anybody believe anything. That responsibility is yours. If you don't want to believe what I say, fairs. If you want to believe something else, also okay, right? It generally doesn't, it won't change my structure of the day, right? Believe it or not, and I think maybe sometimes because in our work we encounter a lot of career politicians, people don't believe that there is actually a life outside of this. And I have been a husband and a father my whole adult life, right? I've got several children. That tends to take up 90% of my time. Then I need to feed them. That takes up maybe the other 9%, right? So if I write a story or if I give you a story, to me, when the story is out, that story is done. When I was working at the Daily Mirror and Daily Examiner, I would go to Doncaster and do stories about young kids that were setting off petrol boom booms and burning down houses, right? You'd get the same response. I remember Nick Fletcher, when he was MP for Doncaster, really taking to his page and accusing me of bias, of coming into Doncaster and painting it in a bad light and this and that. And that was just because Nick Fletcher could not handle the fact that I had come into Doncaster and done this report that showed that there was an entire area that looked like you were in a war zone. It was so bad that people there called it Beirut, right? Likening it to the war in Lebanon long back. It was that bad. But I understood where Nick was coming from. It sucks when somebody reports something that seems so jarring and shocking to who you are as a person or what you're doing as a person, that it makes you question what is it. The natural instinct is, I'm gonna go and attack this person, right? Because it is a better avenue than having to deal with what they say. But what is then mistaken is, for us as journalists, and I can speak comfortably on Hopo's behalf because he's also a journalist, it's a story and it's not personal. I have nothing personal against Nolts Chamisa. If I did, I would have just said so that I've got an issue with you. I've got nothing personal against Wicknell, right? I reported about his deal with Zeg here on Dagap. I've got nothing personal with Magaya. I wrote about his fake degree. Any story you've ever seen on Dagap, I do not have anything personal with those people. Whether it's Chatunga Mgabe, whether it's Proper Junior, whether it's Mai Maketen recently, with the $60,000 curtains, it's a story. And when that story is out there and finished, we move on to the next one, right? I'll share my opinion here and there, but that's just about that. I need to just hold on. I need to ask if my wife can bring me a glass of water because my throat is a bit parched. Could you bring me a glass of water, please? Are you in the house? Yeah. Sorry, guys. I had to order a glass of water. So let me go back to the questions. Masango, during the Motlanthe Commission, did you testify on the side of ZANU? There was no side of ZANU at the Motlanthe Commission. There's no side of anything at the Commission of Inquiry. You go and you testify to what you saw. That's pretty much that. There was no I don't even think ZANU PF had representation there, did they? Unless if they did on days I wasn't. I think so. I think there were people linked to them that came to testify, like people were linked to the MDC. But there was no side. Like, you don't show up and they say to you, they side A, side B, which side are you going to testify about? They ask you where you were, what you saw, share the evidence of what you saw. That's that. Why did Chamisa refuse to work with ED in government? He didn't refuse to work with him. That isn't true. Tijafara, Chamisa didn't refuse to work with ED. The modalities of that deal to make him prime minister they didn't work. when they wanted a GNU, when Trangirai was there was clashes about just how that kind of GNU would look like. After Trangirai died, when Chamisa was now leading the MDC alliance, there were again differences because Chamisa wanted a GNU that did not involve people from the MDC alliance. Eventually, they then tried to offer him what was called leader of the opposition in parliament. That, unless if you're referring to that to say, is that what you think, what you say he refused to accept? Because if it's that you're talking about, there was no provision for that position for official leader of the opposition in parliament. It's not there. And it wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to be prime minister, not to be leader of opposition in parliament. If that's what you mean. With regards to that offer, my understanding from the people from ED's side, and I have to be clear so that you guys know that that's not coming from Chamisa's people. My understanding is post 2028, after, right, that's done. And they do that whole, we're going to postpone elections. They want a setup where there is an inclusive government. The term they're using is proportional representation, which is kind of being borrowed from South Africa, isn't it? And with that arrangement, he would be prime minister. We don't have ice. Shikes. The bane of quitting alcohol. There's never ice. Ever since I gave up alcohol, there's never ice in this house. So don't know if that's what you mean when you say Chamisa refused to work with government. Doesn't have daily in the name. You won't work for the paper. What do you mean? Do you mean my work here in the UK for the Examiner, the Star, the Express? If that's what you're asking, the reason there is not always daily in the paper is that on Saturday it will change. So the Daily Mirror becomes the Sunday Mirror on Sunday, but it's the Daily Mirror on any other day. So to prevent the Daily Mirror being the dailymirror.co.uk, but the Sunday Mirror being the Sunday Mirror, all stories on the Mirror are on the mirror.co.uk, but it's the same paper. Daily Mirror. In fact, these papers are owned by one company. It's called Reach PLC. So the company I actually worked for is called Reach PLC. Reach PLC owns all of your major newspapers in the UK outside of The Guardian, The Independent, and The Sun. So the Star, the Express, that's all Reach PLC. If you go to different places, in Derby, the Telegraph, that's Reach PLC. In Nottingham, the Nottingham Post, that's Reach PLC. They must have like over 250 different regional, they've got local, regional, and national newspapers. So I don't know if that's what you mean, but yeah. Still on YouTube, Kuda Chris recently started following you and X and dug up investigations. I think you have a unique way of bringing stories to light. Your writing is articulate. Kudos to you. Oh, thanks, Kuda. Appreciate that, man. Especially in the middle of a lot of incoming fire. Nach says it's a joke. Oh, all right. I got you, man. I got you, Nach. Let me go back to the guys on TikTok and see. Molin says, can you replay the audio here, please? I think if you just go on Twitter, you will find the audio on Jealous Mawari's post. Ethically, I don't like replaying or resharing conversations that I'm not a part of, right? So this is a phone call with Chamisa, Benimneri, and Auxilium Nangago. I'm not party to that phone call. It's landed on my hands from ED's people sharing it, right? And I'll get to that, to why I think Chamisa is naive to continue to do this thing with the Mnangagwa family. It's landed on my hands from sources from there. I don't want to share it because I wasn't part of that conversation, right? And I've consulted. The NUJ wouldn't approve of something like that. I could do it and get away with it, but they wouldn't. I try to practice my journalism in a way that preserves my press card in the UK. As you'd know, the UK has a lot more stringent laws on journalism than pretty much any other country, probably worse than even Zimbabwe, right? So that's why I personally don't. I talk about it, which is fine, right? So take for example, if I'm doing a story and I get sensitive government documents, right? I can write a story and reference the documents I've seen. If you pick up the New York Times, the Financial Times, the Washington Post, you will see these stories by journalists where they talk and they will refer that, okay, documents seen by Daily Maverick, documents seen by the New York Times, they wouldn't post those documents online, right? In the UK, it would be a crime if I did. But in other places, when it's not a crime, you can refer to documents you've seen. And with regards to the telephone call, what then made it better is that the person who is mentioned in that conversation as being the one angatumwa na Chamisa, kunamai mnangagwa, Hopewell, is confirmed. He's not denying. He is confirming that, yes, Chamisa asked me to go and meet them on his behalf. So you have the primary participant and key witness in this, who is Hopewell, who went there, saying, I went there, I was working with Chamisa, right? And look, I'm arranging a podcast with Hopewell for Friday, one journalist to the other, which will make it much, much easier. So definitely Friday, all things equal, if I don't get booked for a game somewhere that I really wanted to go to, we will do that podcast and I'll get to ask him the questions that you might have. Because mind you, I operate from the perspective of one, the phone call itself, then two, secondary sources, right? So sources that were there at State House when Hopewell was there. Sources that were there when Chamisa started going to State House, right? So sources that were there when Chamisa went to the farm. Logbooks from when he signed in at the farm and when he signed in at State House or when he signed in to Chisipiti, to CED. But those are all secondary sources. Hopewell is a primary source because he's the one who was doing it in Chamisa. So asking him questions is always going to be way better because then I know Hopewell was there because I've got the phone call. So naturally in journalism, you often need 3 pieces of evidence to arrive to any conclusion, right? So with the phone call on its own, that wasn't enough evidence. Even when I first received that phone call, the first thing I did was approach when I went to Chamisa. Guys, I've got this audio last year. I've got this audio. This is what the audio says. And obviously, like I said, they were emissaries. The response was, do you mind just toning it down a little bit? And we will eventually give you what you need to know. But right now, I've got other things to do, and it's not the best time. I didn't stop there, right? You try to verify. So you check out the dates, the times, the hearing. You call people. Do you have an idea who was working State House? Muswakati, Ndianangaru Kuged, Ndianangaru Clearance, Ndianangaru waiting room 1, Ndianangaru waiting room 2. Right? You get to people. People tell you, oh, Ningi was in waiting room 2. And the good thing is then you get logbooks. And did you look a picture logbook of that day? Who signed in, who didn't sign in, etc. You get that information, you confirm 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get to that. So I'm really hoping that we can make Friday happen or Saturday with Hopewell. That would really, really be great. Because Hopewell's one was working with Chamisa in that deal. It was Hopewell, it was Benson Mneri, the guy who owns Hot Plate Grill House, the restaurants. It was Auxilia Mnangagwa, right? If anything, ED got to know about this by the time Hopewell had been sidelined. Hopewell was sidelined, it ended right there. So I'm hoping I can still tie him down for Friday, or if not Saturday. That would really, really be great. But in a nutshell, that's presumptively what happened. And like I said, I mean, the response is obviously to insult me, and that's okay, right? Like I've said, it's insults and attacks on me won't really do much. I'm used to those. When I would write about drug dealers in Doncaster, I would get messages telling me to go back home, right? Or questioning the color of my skin and this and that. It's natural. People respond that way. And don't begrudge them for it. I would just point out because sometimes I feel it's tragic because this story isn't about me. And when this story ends, let's just say after the podcast with Hopewell on Friday, come next week, if I'm not busy and there's another story to do, I'll report that story. And when I report a story and close it, it's a story. It's done for me. I don't even know what's happening with Dumisani. Was it Dumisani Ntombe, the guy from NAST who had a fake PhD doctorate and he was now the head of the accounting department or something like that. The last we followed up on that story was NAST pulled down any reference to his fake PhD. I don't know where Dumisani is. It wasn't personal. I wouldn't even remember. I will work on 10 or 12 or 15 stories a day. It doesn't help that when I left the Mirror, right, and the Examiner, I also started running a publication here where I stay in the UK. So you can imagine I deal with 15 stories per day. It's never personal. I know, for instance, because I did ask, when I was talking to Oppo that, but Mkoma, you and this guy used to work together. Now you don't work together. Perhaps it's something personal. And he said, in journalism, it's never personal. It's never personal. People want to think it is, but it's never personal. In this case, like I said, for me, it was even more puzzling because I wasn't even I didn't kickstart this at all. The amendment bill kickstarted it. Tendai BT started the Constitutional Defenders Forum. Is that the name? CDF, something like that. BT started getting attacked for starting that organization to fight that amendment bill. There were people that said these attacks are coming from Chamisa and he knows why. This is how this thing started to bubble up slowly, right? How it got to this. And what doesn't help is in the past, Chamisa sends people to attack anybody who says things that don't toe his line. This is a fact. Ask Kudam Sasio, and he's tweeted about it. If you go on his wall, it's right there. Kuda is spoken about the web brigades that the CCEC used to deploy in packs to say, okay, Ningata Rajakat, let's all go there. I wrote about this in 2018, I think. Even prior, maybe 2017, about their hunting dogs, these packs that they deploy to go. There's any post, go and attack. Former members of those hunting dogs have spoken about it, right? Former members, even who were not part of the hunting dogs, but who know of it, right? So you go to ex-CCC people, your Macomboreros, your Bay, they talk about how you identify someone and then you say, let's go and, attack, throw mud, do this and that. Those things did not stop when these guys left. So what then happened in this case is when we started getting attacked, knowing the setup they've worked underneath, they immediately said, well, Chamisa is behind this because we know that these things don't happen without his, without his say-so. I, for a fact, in the past, have had messages of encouragement from that camp of things to say, don't worry, we're not going to step in or say anything, right? Or we'll give moral support or X and X. When we did our very first dug up video, which is the one about the truth about Isaac Moyo, and we spoke about how the system really plotted to want to unalive Nelson Chamisa. They wanted him dead. They wanted to kill him, and the CIO thought it was something that they could do. It took Isaac Moyo, who was the director, to say, no, absolutely not. That's a bad idea. We can reach out to Chamisa. We can convince him. We can get him on side. And I raised that as it was rare to see a CIO director whose first response wasn't take out a threat. There was lots of support, messages, including even from very close to people to Chamisa, including himself, to say, kind of always knew this was happening, but thank you for lifting the lead. And when I've touched on stories very close to them, even though for the most part I tend to ignore the CCC, there has been an effective will look to the left, given that there were two stories about us that you didn't publish but said you'd publish them later. And that didn't help, especially with regards to jealousy and Hopewell, because they then felt that we're just trying to do this thing with BT to say we don't want the amendment. You're sending your guys to attack us for no reason. You're attacking us and we think you're attacking us because of that deal that you made. Which is why on Twitter I've said it many times that I don't know what the wisdom of that was. Because mind you, maybe Chamisa in earnest didn't want a GNU because he felt that it would reward greedy MPs with ministerial posts. Of which we would all agree that the current MPs, they're a bit greedy, aren't they? They got housing loans in the last term of parliament. They want more housing loans now. The term of parliament extending benefits them because if we're in an election next year, anyone who's not on Chamisa's side is going to lose. We saw it with Jesima Jome. When she fell out with Chamisa, she lost that seat. So if Joanna Mamombe is in good books with Chamisa, she would lose the Melbourne seat, right? Now, Joanna is not corrupt. She's the best MP we've ever had, but I'm using her as an example. So Wende, for instance, would lose the Kwadzana seat if Chamisa was no longer on his side. And Wende and Chamisa have fallen out. So it makes sense for Wende to support this, right? So there's that. Let me just go through some of the comments here because I ended up like really going deep. But like I said, this is what precipitated these guys then reacting, right? And we're now in this scenario where Hopewell and Jealousy, feeling attacked, have then said, "We know the deal that you did last summer. Now you're attacking us for trying to block the amendment itself." And that's how it popped up. Then I made a comment, "Oh, by the way, guys, I have, what you call it? I'm in possession of that phone call. I've listened to it. And yeah, I know precisely about the time they were dealing with that deal." And then that's then led to a lot of this. So let me just check on YouTube if I missed something. Moses Mla, what's your take on Bill number 3 and where is our democracy leading to? I think the amendment Bill number 3 is ultimately a horrible thing to do. It's extending Emerson Mnangagwa's reign of power for no other reason except power. I think in the past I've said it's power for power's sake, right? So it's one of those. Let me just add a second moderator. Because someone's popped me a message that there's abuse in the comments, but I didn't see them and I can't quite see it. Yeah. So just hold on, guys. I'm just adding a couple of moderators on TikTok. Someone sent me I can see it popping up saying there's abuse in the comments, but I can't. I don't want to stop and have to read every comment, so I'll get back to it. But I've added a couple of more moderators there, so please if you do see any abuse, just take care of it. So yeah, so you're asking what my opinion is on Bill number 3, and I think I've addressed it a couple of times. But you're asking on YouTube, so I understand because I'm usually live on TikTok every other day, and I've spoken that it's an exercise of extending power for the sake of power. There is nothing that Emerson Mnangagwa didn't do in these 2 terms that warrants him wanting another one. So I definitely don't support it. It's a step backwards. It creates a king and not a president. Not that the democracy was functional to begin with, but there were things about the system sometimes that do work. This kind of setup just makes him a sultan. So there's that. Nach says ZBC got into hot water with Simon Rutland and retracted the accusations. The accusations against Rutland were a bit odd, to be fair. No, they were odd because they seem to come out of nowhere. Now, Simon does things. Cigarettes, this and that. I get that. Simon was a very powerful funder of Lacoste prior to the coup. But at the same time, Simon was also a very good funder of G40. So like all businessman, he really, he did his best, to support both sides. I know Simon has given money to the opposition parties, to CCC, MDC Alliance, even as far as even the smaller parties like NPA. He's done that. So I was shocked when ZBC wrote that story. But ZBC has been doing a lot of hit pieces anyway of late. So yeah. Tindo3, Hopewell talked about this call 2 years ago. Why is it making the rounds now? Yeah, so that call is not a recent call. That call happened in 2022, right? Thereabouts. I only got to know about it in 2025. I didn't know about it prior to that. As for why it's doing now, it's what I'd said before where BT was getting attacked. People said this has to be coming from Chamisa. There were then people that responded attacking the people that are working with BT. That's how this whole thing has then popped up. It was just a case of, well, you're attacking BT for fighting the Amendment 3. Perhaps it's got something to do with that deal that you made, right? Because the understanding now is that that deal is in place. If it's extended beyond 2028, Chamisa believes he'll be made Prime Minister. I've said before that I don't think it's wise because Mnangagwa doesn't keep promises. If you were on the live on TikTok on Saturday, when people asked me about the difference between, well, they didn't ask me, I was talking about the difference between Chienga and Mnangagwa. I mentioned that Chienga is a very straight shooter. If Chienga says Monday, it's Monday. If he says 7 p.m., 5 minutes to 7, he'll do exactly what you want to do, right? There's no I'm here nor there with General Chienga. If he likes you, he likes you. If he doesn't like you, he doesn't like you. And you'll be very, very clear that doesn't like you. If he says we're going to work together, you're going to work together. If he says you're not going to work together, you're not going to work together. ED doesn't keep his word. He is not the most loyal of people. So ED can say one thing and mean a different thing. And ED can lie to your face about something. He can lie to you that I'm going to do A, B, C, D and go and do the opposite. Or ED can send someone to do something and then send the next person to go and get that person in trouble for it, right? The instruction for Anamek Chimombe to get that tender, Yembudzi, came from ED directly. The instruction to arrest them came from ED. So that's the kind of person that you deal with. So I have passed as a comment, but Nelson Chamisa is an adult. So he's free to make his own decisions. I don't think ED intends to keep that deal of theirs, which is why these calls have leaked from ED's side. Now you can imagine I'm already tottering very close to being unethical by pointing the direction from which material was sourced. But to make a point, Chamisa's camp didn't leak that phone call. The details of that deal didn't leak from Chamisa's camp. They didn't leak from Alex Magaisa. They didn't even initially leak from Hopol himself. They leaked from that end. My calculation is this. Having gotten Chamisa off their back, especially for the 2023 election, because mind you, this call was prior to 2023. And there was a lot of worries that 2018 would repeat itself. And ZANU-PF didn't want that. They got their inauguration without too much trouble. They got quite a significant chunk out of it. And they don't intend to keep their end of the stick. So why is it doing the rounds now? It's doing the rounds because of this little spat from there. So, yeah. Which Teacher Farah asked, which moves has Chienga been taking that you hinted on earlier on the specifics? Oh, yeah. So on Saturday, I spoke about how it was Chienga wasn't cooking anything. I think someone said maybe Chienga's cooking something. And I said, well, he's not cooking something. The pots are not on the stove. The stove itself doesn't have gas. And nobody's done the shopping. So you could say Maynard is cooking, but there's hints that even though I've not done something, that I'm doing something. Prior to that, there was no hints that Chienga was doing anything, right? There was no evidence that he was doing anything. I even gave the example of Lacoste. And Lacoste was a big thing. They were like a really big thing. And they were like working overdrive during Mugabe's days, right? There were meetings every Saturday, right? Chaired by Sekuru July, Sekuru Joram Gumbo, and Sekuru Lari, right? Everybody in Midlands calls them that. They were chairing those meetings at July Moyo's house. They weren't happening at Emerson Mnangagwa's house. They were happening at July Moyo's place. Muda would come sometimes. Sunduza was a very big player in that. But Lacoste actually existed, right? You had people like Philip Chabata who were... Emerson Mnangagwa was taking a lot of stick from Mugabe and Grace. But Lacoste, as an idea and movement, was moving. It wasn't just silent. I wasn't getting that impression with Chienga. Until after that video on Saturday, when I then got a call from someone who said, when was the last time you looked up the last two discussions that ED and Chienga had and the summary minutes of the last time there was a Politburo sitting? I said, not in a while, but I'll check. And only then did I find out that Chienga had gone to confront ED once this thing was now launching, to say what you are doing is one against the spirit of our agreement. And that agreement was ED would lead one term, then give it to Chienga. It's also against the spirit of the Constitution, which is what we all risked our lives to defend. And while you're in power, nobody can resist you in your face. But there is a very significant risk that you're going to destabilize the country and you're going to cause problems. And Emerson Mnangagwa said to him, I've always said that I'm leaving in 2028. And I've been saying it to your face and saying it in public. When this has happened before, Chienga has ended the conversation there. But for the first time, this time, Chienga challenged him to say, if that is the case, Chef, one phone call, one word from you, this whole 2030 thing, it will stop. You are not being dragged against your will to accept this. This is not the people's movement. Ndosaka vanhu varida kuopposa 2030 vari kusungwa. Mara hali anobvumirwa chete ndeye kusapota. Ari against vanhu vari kusungwa. Chef ngatiudzane chokwadi. You are supporting this thing even though you're not saying it to my face. To which ED got offended and asked him to leave. At the next Politburo meeting, Chienga then brought up the same thing and said, you're walking on very dangerous ground and I may be speaking as a lone voice. And he was a lone voice. But he spoke against that amendment bill and said whatever resolutions came out of that party, it's unlawful. He narrated to them that if my sister and I agree that I should marry my niece, her daughter, and we put that in a resolution, it doesn't make it legal. If I go and marry my niece, the police will arrest me for incest. And he was explaining that in the context of that resolution, be it as it may, it has to comply with the law. If the resolution itself doesn't comply with the law, it's illegal and should not be enforced. It was astounding for me to learn because nobody has ever spoken in a Politburo meeting with the president there and to his face challenged him. That doesn't happen. Even during Mugabe's days, ED never did that because the consequences of that can be bad. They can be dire. I mean, I thought Chienga would resist by starting a couple of cells, resisting this, resisting that. I had no idea. And it began to make sense to me later why it took a long time to get briefings from that Politburo meeting. It took like a while to get them. And I always thought, maybe because there's nothing eventful, but it was because of that. And this is an escalation from when he said to the Politburo, this is him looking the president in the eye and saying, you are going to destabilize the country. And that is his deputy saying that. That is encouraging. It's encouraging because for the first time, you're actually starting to see some form of movement, some form of action. Because I'd gotten to a point where I was like, you know what, this is just like when Sarah Mawoka was saying to ED Dakis, because Chienga's allies are being pushed out. He's being hit left, right, and center. Nobody's got the guts to say to ED, you can't do this. He is essentially getting away with this. So, Tijafara, that's the moves that I was talking about. It's going to be interesting in the next couple of days because he didn't say anything. That was the thing. But we know that when he's offended, Idiano Dilane Oxer. So it will be fun to see how he handles this. But Chienga's challenged him openly in person. And then he's challenged him in the Politburo. And Chienga's idea is not even about him. You know, like in that meeting, ED kind of accused him of, you're too impatient, you're too power hungry, you're too desperate to take over. And Chienga said to the president that, look, this is not about me. Ndoko notojigiwa ku Congress yacho chef before the election, 2028. It's not about, I'm not saying make me the person that follows you, regardless of the spirit of our agreement. My worry is you're going to destabilize the country and you could cause perpetual or permanent ruin. And he gave him the incident of the issues with Sudan and South Sudan, that it's not that far away. Like fracturing is never that far away. It is so hard to make a chain, it's easy to break a chain. So he said to him, this is not about Chienga taking over. You could even disbar me from contesting at the Congress to try and be president in 2028. But I would still say to you, Zamurkwita Sirizo, Chinichenyi Chakadako. And that has really helped, because there's also been a reaching out to influential voices that have previously been quiet, right? So you know fully well that our president consults. That's his thing, right? And he equally got pushback where he consults with one of his traditional healers to say, don't go down that path. Don't do it. His response was to then say, I think Chienga got to you and he paid you. Of which Chienga's response was, Indrim postor and Endungank. So if that helps, Chafara, those were the moves that I was talking about. That is incredible from Chienga. I did not see that coming, and I respect him for that. Nak says, I'm curious for the reason behind the hit piece against Ratland. I definitely want to look it up because it was a confusing one. It was a very confusing one, and I didn't get it. Trevor Gube says, your dedication to truth and excellence in journalism is inspiring. Keep pushing ahead. Oh, thanks, Trevor, man. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Now, let me come back to TikTok. I know I have abandoned you TikTok guys for a while. I just want to deal with the YouTube ones and then come back. So let me sort this out quickly. Just one sec, guys. Hey, I'm just on a stream at the moment. I'll call you just after the stream. I don't know yet. I've been in it for like an hour, but I'll call you once it's done. I'll send you a link. Oh, okay. Let me go to the comments, guys. TikTok has this thing where after each comment, it goes all the way to the back. So forgive me if I take time. Ibo says you had some disturbing health concerns 3 weeks ago. Yeah, man. So that's gonna take time. Because obviously the diagnosis itself is not a good diagnosis, but the prognosis is positive. So I think I'm gonna be okay, So it's one of those, man. I didn't see coming. I think very few people saw it coming. But I'm gonna be fine, right? There's a pathway for the treatment, so hopefully, I get to deal with it. Of course, it sucks. I think nobody ever to be 35 and get a gastric cancer diagnosis feels like a smack in the face, but it's better than no diagnosis at all. So the diagnosis is there, but the prognosis is fine. So I'll be okay, man. I'll be okay. GG says, just finished following the proceedings across the country. I cry for a beloved country. I do the same, man. I do the same. Farizi, you're just doing your job without fear and favor. Thank you, Farah. I appreciate it. Opulent family, good day. Robert Tapfumane, this document, Chimurenga Files. What's your take on that? I haven't seen it. So if you can send it to me, I'll definitely have a look at it. I will definitely have a look at it and tell you. Hey Salani, how are you doing? It's been a long time since we spoke. It's good to see you. Yeah. Oh, I see you also tried to join the live. So how I do these Q&As, I just like answer comments and stuff. But I think a little bit later on, I'll definitely add you and add a couple of speakers and stuff when we get rid of the YouTube guys. So why we don't usually have speakers when we're still live on YouTube is I then can't route the voices from TikTok into YouTube. So the guys in YouTube, they'll be hearing what I say, but there'll be gaps in terms of speech because the guys on TikTok can't speak on YouTube. There is apparently a way to do a multi-guest thing where I route the audio from TikTok also into YouTube, But when I've tried that, my voice then gets an echo, so it just becomes complicated. But I'll add you a little bit later on, and then we'll have that chat. King Com says regime and labelers. I think you have the capacity to reason better than that, King Com. You do. Well, if you don't have the capacity, then I would feel sorry for you. Because like I said earlier on, if I tell you that your pants are down, your pants are down. Doesn't matter. You don't have to like me. You don't have to believe me. You just need to check to see who did now doing it. And the Canada just pick it up. I take advice from people that I don't really always like. So it's one of those. And to be fair, King Com, you don't have to listen. I didn't tag you in the video. I didn't ask you to be here. So if you don't like it, that's cool. No problem, man. Outdoor enthusiast. We also want to hear Chamisa's side of the story. Yeah, we do, but I don't know if he's gonna speak anytime soon. The last contact that I've had today, right, was a phone call from another misery who was saying actually the person, because yesterday I did tweet to tell people that sometimes our friends get us into things. And I was tweeting that because when I was getting attacked and intimidated and stuff, I did, at some point intimate. And I regretted it later, where I said, you know what? I know so many things. I'm just going to bash them out because you're attacking me for no reason, right? And it took my wife, it took Mrs. Manua saying to me, Iowa, if you know something and you kept it to yourself and you reveal it in a fight, there's no integrity in that, right? If at any point you've ever said, okay, I'll give you time on this story, this and that, can you not go down that route? Because then you're just throwing mud. If you're going to do a story, release a story in your own timelines because you can justify it. Right? So I regretted that. But I'd already sent him a message to say, Mkoma, I don't think you want us to go down this route. It's not good. And the response then was, it's not me. It's not him. And the same has happened, right? So people have reached out to Hopewell to say, no, the guys who are running on Twitter are now to Chamisa, right? People are trying to reach out to Jealous Mawadi to say, no, you know what? It's not Chamisa who's doing this. It's people speaking on their own accord. In my case, it was a bit weird because I had people who were telling me that at such a time, 1 to 3 accounts are going to tweet exactly this. And it came out word for word, right? And those are people that work in his office. So I did say, but Mkom, I'm not, because like I said, for me, it's a story. If it's a full story, I understand it, right? You know what? Let's fight. If I'm telling the truth, and I'm telling the truth, and you've even asked me for time before to say, can you sideswipe this, right? And other parties in that phone call, they've also done the same thing. Then it's like, what are we doing? But I let it be. It happens. Bustop TV says, I can't wait for the podcast. It's going to be great, man. Hope was going to say to me, we'll definitely do it. He says, we will definitely do it. So I like that. It will definitely work. King Josh, shut up. Why are you here then? I mean, because you're not going to get me to keep quiet. But then you're also then mistaken that I'm a lot more famous than you in many ways. I shoot in the Premier League, shoot in the Champions League. I'm going to be shooting at the World Cup. Work for the Daily Mirror, Daily Star, Daily Express. I've got 2 documentaries produced on the BBC. One of them has an award. So believe it or not, I actually have a following outside of Zim that doesn't even know anything about the Motlanthe Commission. I was Bushiri spokesperson for 6 years. It's got millions of followers. Some of them follow me for that. Some people follow me for polygamy, right? So you might want to get used to the fact that it's just not true. A small portion of you believe that I'm famous for the Motlanthe Commission. And I'll let you have that, right? I'll let you have that. If that comforts you, then that's cool. Is it true that Chakanwira a bit over 20 million? I don't really know if money changed hands or how much money changed hands. And I don't want to cast aspersions and say Chamisa got paid. What I do know is that they did do a deal that he would become prime minister. And that deal was part of the reason why the 2023 elections weren't contested. Right? Everybody expected a court challenge. Everybody expected people to be in the streets like 2018. Chamisa just let it go. And a lot of that has to go back to the deal that they made. But like I said, I don't think it's a wise deal because ED is not going to keep it. I don't know why Chamisa thinks ED can make a deal with Chienga and walk away from it, but make a deal with him and keep it. It's not going to work. Emerson Mnangagwa wants to be president, and Emerson Mnangagwa wants his wife to become president after, and he wants his kids to become president, and he wants his grandkids to become president. Emerson Mnangagwa is looking at the Uganda model, right? They are people from his home, from his family, and from his office who have been working very close with the Ugandans to see how you can mirror the same kind of administration. I was telling someone that just after Emerson Mnangagwa came into power, he didn't really touch the military a lot until he had a meeting with Museveni in 2019 or so. And Museveni said to him, to prevent you from suffering the fate of a coup, what you need to do is to make sure that you swap your generals a lot. Just give me a second. Yeah. So he said to him, you need to always change your generals. Don't have generals in a space for too long or all of the time, right? And that's what he wants. Believe I know it's gonna sound hard to believe, but he wants to be president, then he wants his wife to take over, and then he wants his kids to take over. But he's not gonna bring up his wife as a candidate now, right? But they have been doing that work. It's why you see that philanthropic heavy angle. It's why you see her going to prisons. It's why you see her going to different places. She resigned as an MP so that she could like really take, do her first lady duties. And that's okay. Right? It's what he wants. It's just unfortunate that if Chamisa believes that Idi will honor his word, then he'll be mistaken. Salani says, how many times has your source been sidelined by Zanu and NC? And then he works against them. I can assume, or was this when we're talking about Hopo being the one that he worked with Chamisa? I mean, I don't really know about the other things that he's done. The ones that I know about, I can speak of. Like in this case, there's a phone call. So when I'm doing any kind of story as a journalist, you don't rely on one primary line of inquiry. So you've got the audio, that's great. You then have logbooks of Chamisa going there, Hopo going there, that's great. You try and get minutes to meetings, that's also great. You also get testimony from the people that were there, that's also great, right? The source for me for that audio call wasn't Hopo. I didn't even know he had it, and he didn't tell me that he had it. My source was from Auxilius people, like I've said, right? Won't go as far as mentioning him, but it came from ED's camp. They're the ones that gave me that phone call. I can tie down all of those things and then come to the conclusion that this thing happened. All the more so because when I approached Chamisa Wacho, they asked for time, which I gave. And it's fine. I don't always have to do a story when it comes out. So I did that, So, and yeah, I mean, I get it. Look, there could be personal reasons to all of this, right? I do try to remove personal motivation, personal ambition out of it. It's why yesterday in one of the tweets, I think when people kept on talking about the chat that was shared and said I was offered Nick Mangwana's job, and I said that's actually not accurate. The job was offered was Deputy Minister of Information, and that was just after Mtoli was fired, and I'd just finished school thereabouts. Or was I just starting uni? But I was here already. I was in the UK already when they made that offer. And I turned that down. I turned that down because my future is in journalism, not in politics. I want to start it. I want to start a journalism university. I've been saying it for ages. It's why I went to school. I pretty much enjoy my life in journalism. Football is my dream. Sports is my dream. It pays my bills, and I like that. There are times when I have to engage in journalism I don't like because it pays the bills. I didn't like being an entertainment reporter covering Emmerdale at the Daily Examiner, but it paid the bills. So there might be motivations, right? I couldn't look and say, oh, Hopel's a good guy or Jealous is a good guy. Inherently, human beings all are selfish and they want different things. I'll just deal with what's on the table. And I try to keep it at that because half the time I preach about I like to have my person removed from from journalism. And that's sort of like how, yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be great to have to add you later on, Salan, because you say so. We've got so much to say. That would be great. Gigi, let's assume the amendment goes through. What is our solution? I don't think there's any, because I look at it now and I think I can't see Mnangagwa's dynasty failing until there is like some action. But unfortunately, what I think is that the the opposition that has the best chance of stopping this annihilation of our constitution, the opposition that can do that is the opposition that comes from within ZANU PF. Because they've got a lot more resources than Triple C, Chamisa, all of the other people. In fact, a lot of the things we see now, MPs being bought and this and that, they all speak to the poverty of the political space and how money and resources are a weapon that's being used to get everybody to turn. So unless there's some opposition that comes from within ZANU PF, it's going to be very difficult. Fadi says, Mdaramneana, honestly, your heart and brain got too much info. Thanks, man. I mean, it's not easy, but I tried. Yeah. Oh, Molly, I didn't see. You're saying, oh, I was being attacked. Let me see. Let me add. The thing is, there should be two moderators, but let me add other moderators. I didn't see. I don't know if TikTok is also filtering like abusive comments and stuff. So they could be that. How do I add? Just give me a sec while I try and add moderators. I don't know how I added them the last time, but I added a few. Yeah. I think, is my light too bright? Let me check with my CDS app here. Because someone just said to me, you look so bright. If I look too bright, guys, I'm sorry about that. Let me just lower the intensity a bit to that. I don't want to be too dark as well, but that should be fine, I think. Let me see. Just give me a sec. Yeah, that's better. That's better. So, if I had money, I'd have like a producer on set who handles these things. It would really, really help. Could it be Jonathan Moyo who wants to destroy ZANU from within? I think Jonathan Moyo is in the business of Jonathan Moyo. So I think Jonathan Moyo will go where the money goes. I'll never work with Mugabe again, and then he works with Mugabe. I'll never work with ED again, and then he works with ED. So, I mean, it could be him. There's definitely a lot of confusion. Do you make sense in Paul Mangwana saying that if ED refuses, ZANU-PF will deal with him? No, I don't. Because there are no provisions of removing Mnangagwa from office. You remember when Mugabe was removed, it was called a symbolic recall. So they recalled him, but only symbolically. If Mugabe hadn't resigned, you'd have still been president. They didn't have the capacity to recall him. So there's that. I hope we're getting investors. Yeah, me too, man. DJ Ali, you like the setup. Thank you, man. Lolo Newe Msaigwa Aroi. Hi, bestie. How you doing? So it's great to see my best friend on the stream. It's good to see you, Lorraine. She's been my best friend since 2009. Friends since 2007 in high school. But yeah. Are investors ready to do business with Zimbabwe? I don't really know. Advice is a tough pill to swallow sometimes. Yeah, I know, man. It can be difficult to get advice. Every time I come on this live, I feel inspired. Oh, thanks, Blue. That means a lot, man. There's a lot of fire in the comments. Out of topic, this gentleman was my classmate from grade 3 to grade 7. Oh, hi, Destiny. Yeah, Destiny was my head boy in primary school. That's great. And Passy Grant, we're in the same stream, same class. KG Shona King, how many wives do you have? A lot. A lot of them. Can I join up with something to talk about? Yeah, just hang around. We're gonna add guests just now. And then so what we'll do is we'll end the stream on YouTube and then we'll add guests. So speaking about that, there's question on YouTube. Nak says, has there been anything new about the abducted student? Not that I've heard. I mean, I saw the flyers. I sent questions and those questions haven't been responded to. T-Maz, get well soon. In your humble opinion, do you see things rolling out in Zimbabwe? Do you think they'll succeed, Gananda? I can't, the thing is, and that can be a difficult thing as a journalist where I've got something I hope for, right? Which is, I really hope that this thing doesn't go through, that amendment doesn't happen. But at the same time, I've got all this information in front of me and I can't see who's going to stop it. I can't see who's going to stop it. I can't see how they're going to stop it. So I'm then like in that situation where it's a painful place to be. Like it's a very, very painful place to be because I can't see how anybody could stop this. Sorry, guys. Jeez. I don't know why people are saying the stream is looking funny. It's looking okay. But okay, dogs. But yeah, so I can't see how this can be stopped. And that concerns me a lot. It concerns me a lot because I worry. I look around Africa and I see how long Museveni has been in power for. And also realizing that ED is taking notes from Museveni, right? He's got like a lot of the top Lacoste guys, like the top strategists, like your think tanks for Lacoste, not the public facing ones. They've been in Uganda for a while. And not just in Uganda, staying in Museveni's residence. So I'm just thinking, what kind of notes is he getting from Museveni? And we're starting to see him implementing those measures by Museveni, like always changing army generals, always moving them around and this and that. So you look at that and you think, oh no, that's wild. So that part is depressing. And what I often have to deal with is I have to deal with the fact that there has to be some kind of hope. Because obviously I have aspirations for Zimbabwe as a country. There's a certain kind of Zimbabwe I want to see. But outside of those aspirations, I'm also then in that spot where I have to be real, right? And the reality is I don't see who can stop them. Like I've said before, nothing short of a coup can stop this madness. But Emerson Mnangagwa has made sure that there are no conditions for a coup. Like it will take a significant thing happening. You can never say never, by the way. You can never say never because there's a time, like I've said, when it looked like nobody could stop Mugabe and then eventually Mugabe was stopped. So there's that. Ernest Kurumba says, your chat is very informative, quite balanced, bearing the complexity in our political environment. Thank you. I try to keep it like that. It's not always easy because you deal with repetitive questions, you deal with attacks, you deal with, all of those things. So you kind of get to a point where sometimes people try to snare you in, But when that happens, one of my mentors in journalism, right, he's actually a Zimbabwean and a lot of people don't know this. His name is Idris Alinyasa. He's in Malawi. He's worked for the United Nations and stuff. Idris said to me once, don't punch down. And that was in response to somebody who had said something very insulting. And I responded and said, don't punch down. Your attention to elevate them is exactly what they need. They want to snare you in, so don't punch down. That's been very, very helpful in getting me to try and keep the conversation focused on exactly what we're talking about. So we're talking about a topic, it's sensitive. I'm speaking about information that people don't want to hear. Because I mean, it's annoying to hear that somebody you believed in so much turned down a deal for a GNU because he wanted one that was different. He wants to be prime minister and is effectively supporting the annihilation of the constitution because he'll essentially become like a PM for life. So for as long as ED or whoever follows after him is there, he'll be prime minister, which is a great, great job to have. That's going to hurt people. And naturally, when people get hurt, the first thing they'll say is, "Well, kunyep." And I've said, "Well, it's not my story. It's not me alone who's saying it, and it's a story that wasn't denied, you know." And I think also you then get used to it because the usual responses are then always, "You lied to the Commission of Inquiry." By people that didn't watch the Commission of Inquiry, by people that didn't watch the actual live stream when I was on the ground. So I'm arguing by people who weren't there, who didn't witness what I saw, and who haven't even watched it. Who've just 1, 2, 3, let's go with it, right? You get that a lot. It ends up meaning nothing. You then usually get the usual polygamy, barika, bushiri. Kind of get used to those as well. And to be fair, like I said, I've worked in very difficult conditions and positions, you know. I worked in South Yorkshire following the police's fight against drug dealers. That was not easy, right? I've had been held up at knife point. It's right there on the Daily Examiner. I got to a point where I can't go back to Rotherham. It's just too dangerous for me to go back to Rotherham. If I go to Sheffield, I watch my back. I did stories in Doncaster, like I said, about kids that were, if you just Google Maynard Manor, the Royal Estate, you'll see it. It's crazy. I did stories about Goldthorpe in Barnsley, right? A high street that just died. A place where it's easily the most dangerous place in the UK. Not for personal safety, but there are a lot more burglaries and robberies in that little village than almost everywhere else, right? Did a story about that. And the response from, especially the Doncaster one, was from an MP. Can you imagine an MP who's white posting your picture and a link to a story and saying, "I don't know who this journalist is coming in and writing this stuff about our area. Our area is not that bad, etc." That's obviously going to be a dog whistle for a lot of racism. Get out of here. Go back to Africa. What is he even doing in Doncaster, etc.? So after a while, you kind of grow a thick skin. You kind of get used to it. Sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't. And yeah. So, Blue was asking why would end. So what happens with the stream on YouTube, right, is if we add guests here on TikTok, the guys on YouTube can't hear them unless I put it on speaker. But when I put it on speaker, that speaker and this mic that picks up my voice will cause reverb. So I can't do that. If I route the audio automatically into YouTube from the TikTok studio, I will not be able to hear it. And if I switch it on my headphones, when I talk, it then causes echo. So it's like this complicated thing about routing audio that is really making it difficult. And obviously, I can't stream on TikTok and then go and stream on YouTube. So I'm left in that little zone. So that's why I was going to take them down or take them off. Otherwise, I wouldn't really want to get rid of the guys on YouTube. But it was more a case of there's that's happening. So if I'm to add guests on TikTok, because on YouTube I don't know how to add guests. I don't even think it's possible. I don't know how to handle that. So that's why. Blue asks, does Zimbabwe still have sanctions? I know the EU removed all of them except for an arms embargo. That's still on. So, there's that. Let me see. Did I miss? Somebody cracked a joke and I missed that joke because I see Passy Grant is responding to a lot and saying, "I love this humor," but I'm not quite sure. Blue says, I'm not political, but I'm just a Zimbabwean citizen. That's good, man. I'm not political either. I'm just a journalist. People like to think I support certain parties, but I don't. To some degree, but you could say I do though, because 2018 I supported Noah Manyika and Nkosana Moyo. I eventually was a Noah Manyika guy, like my personal conviction, right? 2023 I was a Linda Masarira fan. I like I like lead, lead is great. Nach on YouTube says I should try StreamYard. Okay, I'll give them a go. I tried Riverside FM. They were charging like 44 pounds a month, and it was just a mess. They were great, but I couldn't directly stream into TikTok. I needed to manually do it. I couldn't directly stream into Facebook because then the stream would be private and there's no way of changing it back to public, even with the stream key. So I just got tired of it. And I thought for 44 pounds, nah, this is just too much. Pragmatic asks, what's your take on Chamisa Hopo saga? Apologies if you've already spoken on the matter. Yeah, I did, but I can answer to you. I think what was unfortunate was you had people that worked together, stop working together, take different parts, but then fall out later. And for that fallout, especially this latest one, I think it's more. Hopo did start getting attacked. And he's certain that it was being attacked on Chamisa's behalf. Not just behalf, but people were sent to do it. And obviously, he has the institutional memory of how these things work. Chamisa now says he didn't send them. I think I said it on Twitter that he didn't send them. And the emissary that came to me today also said the same thing. Even yesterday, the different one that came said, no, Chamisa is saying I'm not the one who's behind this. Obviously, like I said, my reservation was I had people sending me what tweets were going to come out when, and the people in his camp. So I just did say, look, if he says it's not him, it's okay, right? I'm okay with it anyway, which is why I felt bad for when I lashed out and said, if that's the case, I'm going to release everything, right? And like I said, I did that, right? And then my wife came and said, why? There is absolutely no integrity in doing that. So it's an unfortunate thing also because it's happening right at the height of the consultations for the amendment bill. So this is now dominated conversation Saturday, Sunday, today's Monday. And a student's been abducted. We're still talking about Chamisa and his prime minister offer. So many things have happened, and we're not talking about those things and not talking about the really important thing, which is Emerson Mnangagwa wants to be life president. Not even life president, he wants to be king. Because the new powers is asking for means Zimbabwe is going to be ruled by a sultan. He will be the equivalent of an emperor. He can do what he wants. He's not accountable to parliament. He's not accountable to the judges. I know we already live in a space where the judiciary themselves are compromised, very heavily compromised. Judgments get written in State House. They're delivered to the judges for key and consequential cases. I think you remember me commenting about the Mike Chibombe case where the judge was reading his judgment, seemed to not understand sometimes what he was reading. And I said, there is no way this guy wrote that judgment because he doesn't seem to know what he wrote. But what Mnangagwa is asking for is to become the emperor. And that is dangerous for Zimbabwe because that means we become Qatar or Saudi Arabia, but without the oil or the riches. I mean, if we're rich, I think we would all be okay with it. I think people don't mind benevolent dictatorships. I think it's a problem when things are the way that they are and somebody wants to be emperor. So Trixander asks, what's your TikTok? So it's also dug up. So if you look for dug up on TikTok, yeah, it's also dug up. Who cares about having 5 wives if you can't have hospitals? See? I like that one. Blue says, no point having guests. Let's just chill. Forget bringing people up on TikTok. All right. Where is Dr. Manyika? I don't know. I tried to send an email to the address that I had on file, and there's been no response to it. So he just went down. So AC asks, can you give a lowdown on Nelson Chamisa Prime Minister thing? Okay, you're 8 hours behind. Okay, we did speak about it earlier. So there was just a deal. Abandon challenging the 2023 elections. Will amend the constitution. ED becomes president for life. You come in as prime minister. That was the deal, right? And that deal was struck before the elections. Hence, 2023 wasn't really that organized. Chamisa didn't really do as many rallies. It was a half-hearted attempt to try and win the election. And They still did well, but he didn't contest the election. So that was the deal itself. The details of that deal were contained in part in that phone call, but for the most part, Hopewell was the one who was working on it with Chamisa, and Magaisa was now late. They know about that story. But it's not just them, right? There are a lot of senior figures within government and within MDC that know this. And I think maybe that's what upset Jealousy a lot as well, in that some of the people that knew about this deal started attacking Jealous as if he was a madman when they knew the details of that deal. That upset a lot of people. So, I mean, I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen senior people not subtweeting me directly, because I think maybe they thought we subtweet him, he's just going to go and say something. But I've seen them subtweet other people or say things to the contrary when some of them are in the logbooks and in the meetings that Chamisa was having with Mnangagwa. And you're looking and thinking, what? You're joking. But that's the lowdown of it. I've said it's okay. There's nothing wrong with Chamisa wanting to negotiate with the Mnangagwas or wanting to be prime minister. If it is that's what he wants and that's what his supporters want, then that's okay. So that's pretty much what happened. Blue says, I knew Mnangagwa wanted to die on the throne. I mean, he says he doesn't want to, right? But I think I've addressed this before where I said, I've asked him 2020, 2021, 2022, 23, 24, 26. Is it 2025 that I skipped? I think 2025 or 2024. I skipped one of those years. And every time I've asked him that question, he is increasingly frustrated the next time you ask it. That he says, did I not speak about this? I don't want to die on the throne. I'm going to retire in 2028. But he says this. And then straight after that, he installs somebody whose job becomes to go around the country and convince people to extend the constitution. Which is why I said earlier, I'm very happy that Chienga started to challenge him, because Chienga had just been so quiet this whole time. But he started to challenge him that anytime he says, what are you doing? And he says, no, it's not me. These guys, they're pursuing their democratic right to want me to be life president. He's now said to him, no, you're behind this. You're not telling the truth. This is you. You are doing this. So, yeah. It's what he wants to do, man. George Charix on YouTube asks, is Dr. Tungwarara a PhD holder? So Paul Tungwarara is not a doctor. Neither does he have a PhD. Now, since people started asking about the PhD, which is around about the time when Dagup was doing the fake doctorate files, they ran to scrub everything off the internet, such that if you look for anything to do with this PhD, you don't find it now. But there's something on the internet called the Wayback Machine, right? If you go into the Wayback Machine, it takes you to what the internet was like in the past. You can then see the posts and the different websites and the different places where Tungwarara was awarded that PhD. And one of those universities in Indonesia is a degree mill. So it's not a real university. Then it even gets worse, because there's then talks of him having done a bachelor's and a master's in Sierra Leone. And that university in Freetown said Tungwarara has never been a student here. So, but they did leave it open by saying, has he ever gone by any other name? We've sent questions to Paul Tungwarara a long time ago. When we did that, our Dagup was hacked the next week. And if you remember, we were hacked on YouTube for quite a long time. About 4 days. We're very lucky to get it back. Largely because if you go on my Facebook and look back to 2015, 2016, I used to attend a lot of Google seminars. So I've met a lot of different people from YouTube within the ecosystem. So I was able to get a lot of help quicker. But under normal circumstances, what they had done to the Dagup YouTube, we should have never gotten it back. But we're able to show it had been hacked, and they sorted that out. So, yeah. Trix asks, did the deal go through or it's now off the table? Chamisa kept his end of the stick. Didn't really challenge the election in 2023. Hasn't really been opposing ED since. So he's kept his end of the deal. The challenge is Mnangagwa doesn't intend to keep his end of the deal and make Chamisa prime minister, which is why they have leaked that audio. That audio came from ED's camp. So, and it's come from ED's camp for no other reason than for Chamisa to be discredited. Because, I mean, if you split Chamisa supporters, right, the ones that are logical and look at things at face value and apply their minds, a lot of them will be questioning why such a deal was in place. And he will lose a lot of credibility out of that. For the other half that support him, that's fine because it doesn't matter. It's AI. It's not real. It didn't happen, etc. That's also okay. But it's introduced this conversation that Chamisa didn't need. And it's been leaked from them. Which is why I said, given that ED had a deal with Chienga and didn't keep that deal, I think ED is not going to keep his deal with Chamisa. He's not going to make him prime minister. He might change and shame me, you know? That would be great. But the indications are that they don't want to keep that deal. Because why else have they allowed that thing to leak? And it leaked at a point when, by that time, the election was gone and done. And Chamisa couldn't challenge it anymore. Nobody had the appetite. It was now fait accompli. So, let me see. Loki says the amendment, Raendwa. Yeah, I can't see how it can be stopped, man. Fully says ED is building an oligarchy which is workable with Russian oil and uranium deposits. It could be, because he's definitely creating a lot of billionaires around him and using those to fund his life presidents. I wouldn't be surprised that ED wants to be like Putin. Definitely makes sense. Roland, what do you think about the amendment? Do you want a straight answer or a no under 18 answer? Because if you want a straight answer, I think it's crap. I think it's total crap. It's self-indulging and only meant to make ED the emperor. Zimbabwe deserves better than that. I come from Zishawane. Do I like having a president from Zishawane? Hell yeah. Do I think we should sacrifice the country's future on the altar of a man who wants power for power's sake? No. Absolutely not. Did Hopo broker the deal? Who are the signatories to the deal? Broker. So, I mean, I explained this earlier that the Benim Neri approached Chamisa. Chamisa approached Benim Neri. I don't know who approached who, but they were the two key figures. And Benim Neri was meant to facilitate that deal via Auxilia. That was the deal. That was the thing. Initially, Chamisa was hesitant. He didn't want to take people from the MDC alliance. That's why he reached out to Hopo and asked Hopo to meet Benim Neri. That's how Hopo met Benson Neri. And from there, that's how Hopo met Auxilia. And Hopo, I think, is, by Auxilia's accounts, they've met twice, right? I'll need to ask him, Hopo, to see if it tallies with what he says, but they've met twice, I think. And the offer was, let's do a GNU and you're prime minister. Chamisa was like, no, I want to be prime minister, but no GNU. So me alone, not me and people from the party. Hopo then consulted with Magaisa. Because remember, Magaisa was one of the people that wrote the constitution. And Alex said that would be unlawful and it would be unconstitutional. That is where the problem started. Because then, when Chamisa found out, he wasn't happy. Which is why when you hear that phone call, Chamisa speaks about not wanting go-betweens anymore. He now wanted it to just be direct. So that's how that deal happened. And then Hopo got elbowed out of the deal, right? Afterwards, Chamisa started seeing Mam Mnangagwa personally. And via Benson, and Hopo was thrown out of that deal. Somehow, I think Hopo, according to someone in the comments, gets that phone call about 2 years ago. I didn't see it 2 years ago. I got it last year. And he says it was posted or spoken about. I got it last year, made my inquiries, spoke to people in Chamisa's camp. They asked for time. I let it go. When I spoke about this on Saturday, Jelas then released a 20-second clip, right? And then when people said to him, oh, is this 20 seconds? He then released a 60-second clip, right? The call itself is just over 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes and 41 seconds or something. At least the one that I listened to. And it does have Chamisa and Ben, and then Ben later on adds Maimnangagwa on the call. So that call is there like that. Since then, obviously, it's been all systems go. The constitution is being amended. Chamisa is standing up to it, which is his right. I'm not his voter, so I can't ask for him to do anything. I can only do what I want to do. But then that fallout happens when BT and them start fighting the amendment. And then Chamisa's supporters start attacking them for fighting the amendment. And then the guys who are fighting the amendment say, you're attacking us because we know the deal you did. That's why you want this amendment to sail through. And then we find ourselves here. It's just that, like Zimbabweans are in this space where the current MPs want 2030 to happen because they get to enjoy 2 more years in parliament. Because the majority of them, especially opposition ones, the majority of them are not going to be in the next parliament because the majority of them fell out with Chamisa. And if Chamisa isn't on your side, you're not going to win in the opposition. Fadzima lost to a passport photo, right? That's reality. When she then came in under Chamisa, won easily. BT lost to a candidate endorsed by Chamisa. The Tendai BT. So a lot of these MPs benefit from the perpetuation of the current cycle of parliament because it's a perpetuation of the tokens they get, accommodation fees, seating fees, fuel coupons, cars, housing loans that they never get to pay back. They get all of that. So opposition MPs in parliament support that, except maybe 1 or 2, right? Maybe Rusty Makram, because he's the one that, I think he's the only one that refused the housing loan, isn't it? Or something like that. The rest of them, they'll take it. ZANU-PF MPs can't go against their president because you get chucked out. Chamisa becoming prime minister also then benefits him. He becomes the second most powerful man in the land. More powerful than the vice president, you'd say. Now you've got that issue. Mnangagwa wants to stay in power. Benefits him. Chamisa will be PM. Benefits him. Opposition MPs get 2 more years in parliament or forever. Benefits them. ZANU-PF MPs benefits them. It's only you guys. It's only you guys are like, yeah, I don't want this. Everybody else is, George Haddock's General, where is General Sbanda in the mix of things? I'm trying to reach out again to find out where he stands. But General Sbanda likes to keep his cards in his chest. But the last I heard, he's due for a deployment. So he's got a deployment on the way. And so all things equal, you see that deployment very soon. Nach says, explain the loss to the passport photo. Okay. So Fadzima was an independent candidate. She was running to be MP. She ran the best campaign that I have seen. Modern, proper regalia, outreach, everything you can think of. A campaign was run, I think, in part with Bikotan San. Now, Kudamsa Siwa is the father of digital campaigns. He's good at that. Fadzi was contesting an MDC alliance figure that wasn't living in Zimbabwe. He was living I think he was outside of Zim at the time. People didn't meet him. He didn't campaign. He didn't have a rally. So the logic of a passport photo came from people saying the only thing people knew about him was the passport photo that went on the voters thing, on the voting slip. People who saw Fadzi every day voted for a guy they didn't know and had never met. They'd only seen his photo. So that's what the whole passport photo thing means. I'm just going through the questions. Imagine all the people that have died for the cause supporting the opposition. Yeah, that one's sad. I think someone tweeted that as well. Yeah, it says Chamisa should not have any credibility whatsoever. Like Jonathan Moyo, Chamisa is in the Chamisa business. Yep, I agree with you. No under 18 answers. All right, Olin, sorry about that, man. I'll clean my mouth. Blue, why does Chamisa just want to be prime minister? It's the quickest avenue to eventually become the head of state. And ED's thrown in a kind of fillers in there that look, eventually I can become a non-executive president like Banana. And then you can lead the country. So we go back to pre-unity accord, we have an executive president, a non-executive president, and then an executive prime minister. Roland, where's the audio? It's there. Jelas Mawere posted it. He posted two of them. Was Changirai this conniving and self-serving? I think Changirai's political career had phases. I think ultimately he was a very selfless person. But there were times when he took out opponents if he thought they were a danger to him. Remember at the 2014 Congress when Chamisa leaves without a post, when he loses the Secretary General election to Monzora. Changirai engineered that. But I think he realized his mistake and then brought Chamisa back later on, didn't he? He then appointed him as vice president. But that was against the MDC constitution because there were no provisions for the vice president to be appointed. So he was basically an illegal vice president. So there was that. Is the current ZNA commander close to number 2? They're okay. They're okay. But that one's ED's guy more than anything. He is ED's guy. He left the military a long time ago. And eventually spent a long time at the CIO. So there's that. Mill says Jelas post the 60 seconds one and the shorter one, but where's the 10-minute one? I think maybe he might post it. I don't know. I don't want to post it for ethical reasons. And I think Hopewell hasn't posted it either. But he's got I would like to believe we've got the same. The thing is, because we are not working together, I don't quite know if we have the same length of call. The one I have was like 10 minutes 41 seconds. I don't know about the one that Jealousy and Hopewell have, but they do have it. Hey Larry, sorry, I think I skipped. TikTok does this thing of skipping questions, so I need to check. Let me see, Larry. If you don't mind, Larry, could you ask it again? Because I can't see it. Wait. Without Chamisa, if it's not Mnangagwa, then who? I don't know. It's tiresome, man. It's tiresome because it's difficult to think who, because we have such a crisis of leadership, Chienga's no saint on his own, man. He's got 95% of what Mchangwa said in that phone call I did with him about Chienga is true. So there's that. So let me see. Mill says, without the audio, Amusquititi said, no. When you are pursuing any kind of story, you don't rely on one source of evidence, isn't it? The audio itself is one source. It's what made me start to investigate it anyway, right? When you investigate, you speak to people that know about the deal, people that were there. And this one is even better because the person who was a key figure in those meetings is confirming it. Good, yeah, I was there. That's what I was doing. So there's that. And then obviously usually when you do any kind of story in journalism, you're looking at 3 independent sources, especially if it's something you didn't witness yourself. And you use those sources and use that evidence to cross-check against each other. So that's what's happened in this case. Like I've said to you, if you go on the New York Times today, if you go on the Daily Maverick, Financial Times, The Economist, the BBC, even in investigations, they'll refer to documents we've seen. Like, for instance, I've mentioned about logbooks, State House logbooks. Right? Posting a logbook from the State House would violate the Official Secrets Act, right? It could be sensitive information. I think I could even be in trouble here in the UK for posting a document that sensitive, even from Zim. So there's that side of things. And ethically, I can't release a conversation I'm not a part of. My conversation with Mchangwa, he solicited that interview. He called me. I didn't call Mchangwa. He called me. Secondly, I made it clear to him that, can I put this on record? He said yes. And at the end, I also checked with him, by the way, this is on record, and can I use this audio? And he said yes. right? But even if he had said no, at least the UK is a one-party state for the most part. So as a part of the conversation, I can release it. If I released a conversation between third parties, they could likely complain to the NUJ. I value my press card with the NUJ because it's what allows me to then do my other work, right? So the work I do in football, the work I do everywhere else that I do, you need, for you to get accreditation anywhere or to work as a journalist in the UK and get access to anything, you need a reason to be there. The press card is a very good reason for me to be there before any kind of accreditation. Also, I enjoy a lot of legal protection from the NUJ. So if, for instance, anybody attacked me for my work for this, right, the NUJ would step in and defend me. But if I practice unethical journalism, the NUJ would not only cancel my press card, they could refuse me to continue being a union member and going on and on and on. So I've done my best bit to tell you about the audio, to tell you what's inside the audio, to point you to a source that was involved in it, and to also speak of documents I know and documents I've seen. If at that point you are not convinced, it's okay. The good thing about these things is eventually they come to the fore. I'll tell you, for instance, a very simple story. When I wrote about Dumisani Mtombeni at Aldersgate College or Nanette Silikuni, I didn't post my communications with the Philippines government and the ministries and this and that. I told you what was in those communications, right? There are many investigations I've done here. When I spoke about Mebo Chinomona and the $60,000 curtains, right? I was relying on procurement documents, invoices, etc. Right? I saw the documents. I mentioned them, the documents I had seen. I didn't post them here, right? Wicknell and Renform, that 1 million deal. Again, spoke about it, told you the facts, etc. I didn't post everything. So it's, journalists will always refer to things we've seen, things we've heard, people we've spoken to. And even when you speak to people, you speak to someone, you check, you cross-check. We call it firming up. You firm it up by finding a different source that can either corroborate, either by means of explanation, support, or contradiction. Speak to what you've just done. That's why journalism is so different from content creators. Content creators will just pick a story, write about it. That's content creation. Journalism, things have to go through what we call a gatekeeping process, and that's a gatekeeping process. The audio on its own was never going to be enough for me to open my mouth because I would have been lacking things like context, dates, times, etc. I used that audio as a pointer of where I think things are happening and went there to start getting information. Get information from there, use that to cross-check and check with the other one. And that's how we do our work. I know it could be different because I know in Zim I've seen journalists post my docket online and this and that. I personally don't do it. I've never done it. That 60-second one you're talking about, Jelas posted it. The 20-second one, he posted it. I didn't post anything. If you go and check, I have not posted any telephone call between third parties. I don't think it's illegal. Hopo also hasn't posted it. So that on its own makes me like, and me and Hopo share the same jurisdiction. So I'd like to think he is as aware of the potential ethical implications as I am. So that's that. Let me see. Sorry for blowing into the mic, guys. Blue says, as a Shona, I'm tired of Ndebeles thinking we own them. We owe them something. Oh, okay. Roland, did Hopo post the audio? Not that I know of, no. Everything about the Chabangu recall screamed NC. Ede was complicit, damnable. I think the Chabangu one, there's a video of Chabangu saying, if Chamisa doesn't know me and I wasn't working with him, why doesn't he deposit an affidavit stating that? Like, why doesn't he write under oath that doesn't know me? I've seen that. So, who do you think would be number 2's vice presidency if he takes over? That one is difficult because Chienga is very loyal, but it could be Gray Mashava, I suppose. If you know General Mashava, General Gray Mashava is Chiwenga's guy, like that. If Chiwenga ever led, I think General Mashava would be up there because he is the guy. So General Mashava, definitely. The other president, I don't know. Plus, again, when you become president, there's a lot of things to consider. He has to find a vice president from Zipra. The Unity Accord, remember? Doesn't have to be Ndebele vice president, but somebody from Zipra. Like Kembo Moadi. Kembo Moadi is not Ndebele, is Venda, right? But he was from Zipra. So we always have to have a vice president from Zipra. So that makes me think Valerius Band. That makes me think, okay, maybe Valerius Band. But it could be other people. You never know. After Joshua rested Ndebele's. Whoa. Okay, I can't finish that comment. YouTube will take me down. Mini Baloy has done a stellar job of rehabilitating Chienga's public image. It's been nice to watch, right? How General Chienga has really, really changed. Like, have you noticed now that General Chienga has got it's like this? You see, like this thing here. He's got this thing where that Mugabe used to have, where they shave this side and they just leave this part, like this mustache thing. He's got that now. And if you listen to him speaking, he's starting to sound like Mugabe. He slows his speech. He speaks. He accelerates the tone of his delivery. Then he stops. You can really see the investment into making General Chienga sound like a statesman. It's like right there. You can see it. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen that. I'm just like, oh, wow. Okay. See, this country doesn't have leadership. I've always said, yeah, we don't, unfortunately. It's crazy. It's crazy. Bobby says each day Nkosana Moyo is proven right. Yeah, it is. I think in a normal country where ideas win, Nkosana Moyo becomes president. He is by far the most sensible, straight-speaking leader we've had. Him and Dr. Noah Manyika. But then at the same time, power changes people, man. So somebody gets into power, we're not quite sure that we'll get the same person. So it's tough. This is a hard pill to swallow, to be honest. There's a talk of a third force led by Hopewell et al. I wouldn't know, my brother. I'm going to have a podcast with Hopewell on Friday. I can't speak to what he's doing and what he's not doing. But in as far as I know, I would be surprised if Hopewell wants to be a politician, but I can't speak for him. So a third force, yeah, we always have those talks. I know Trevor Ngube used to be very big on a third option, Amphirite, Wicknell, GDPR when posting, is that even legal? So, I mean, it would depend. So GDPR in the UK applies to businesses that collect personal information, right? So this information would have been collected by Benson, right? Or by people from ED's camp or whoever recorded that. They'll be like the data handler or something like that. So, but there's a lot of gray area outside of GDP about posting that audio. And the one that made me think is the Malicious Communications Act more than anything. That's something that has been used against journalists in the UK. So I thought about that and I thought, that one's difficult. That's why I wouldn't. I post screenshots of my missus on Twitter because she gives me permission. I tell her. So recorded calls where I'm not part of the conversation, they're so tricky. They're very tricky. There's also privacy laws, because they could end up accusing me of subterfuge, which I just don't want to deal with. BT, Scala, and others aren't there on the other side of the amendment. No, because BT is the one who's going around fighting the amendment. He's the only one that's doing it. That's why he got arrested for it. So he's definitely not supposed to, support it. Yeah, Mill says BT said Makurumi Zangacha Perega Munu, referring to the Chabangu saga. It's real confusing. Yeah, it is. But you know what, Mills? If you remember that phone call, we only got to hear a bit of it, right? And I'm being sneaky here by using your reasoning earlier, which is we made judgments out of the BT clip, which wasn't in its entirety without context, but we can't make judgments about the clip of Chamisa speaking to Muneri and Auxilia. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the opposition. I don't know if you ever played a game called Fumble when we're growing up. You make a mountain of soil, like a mound of soil. And then there's a stick in the middle. And every time someone has to remove a little bit of dirt. And eventually, if you remove enough dirt, the stick falls. But whoever last moves the soil and causes the stick to fall gets a beating of a lifetime. So I feel like the opposition always do that to each other. right? It's a game of Fombo. Or even the other one, a game of Fongo, where if you bend down, I kick you in the backside. I think they do that. Like they're waiting. The moment you bend over, give you a nice kick in the backside. I think they do that. I agree on Kosana Moyo. I was a part of his campaign, an honorable man. Yeah, I think Kosana remains the only minister we had who resigned on the basis of integrity because the government just wasn't doing what he wants. What's on the other parts of the 10 minutes? Yeah, it's just the structure of the deal and him being PM and stuff and him wanting Emiseris to be removed because they're trying to rope back in the people from the MDC team. That was that. I feel you prefer the Leonard only. No, Tatenda. I'm not assuming you mean like I prefer educated people. No. Educated people are some of the bane of our country, you know? It's why there's this obsession by our leaders to get all of these fake titles. I prefer a leader that gets things done. So for instance, I really, really loved Chino Timba as an MP. I also really loved Temba Mliso because he was always on the ground. Right. I really like Joanna. Joanna Mamwembe is my MP in Memborain. And when she was MP, she wasn't learned. She had a degree, I know, but she hadn't gone to do her master's. But Joanna was there, like she's got community WhatsApp groups, etc. So no, I would take any leader, as long as they do things right. But then, at the same time, Tatenda, it shouldn't be about what Maynard wants. Because the thing is, I should be able to tell you anything about everyone, right? Which was like the main point of contention when I was complaining about me being attacked for suddenly speaking about Chamisa. It was that I have been reporting about corruption in ZANU-PF for ages. So I should be able, you can't say to me, you can't talk about Chamisa. Yes, I can. That was the thing. So I should be able to talk about this person and that person and that person. So it shouldn't be about what Maynard wants. Because remember, I'm just a journalist. I just tell you guys stories. I tell you stories, I move on. I finish this, gonna take a painkiller because I got a nasty headache. Take a painkiller, probably gonna take my dog out for a walk. I'm gonna play with my dog for the rest of the afternoon. Come back, pick up my kids, take them around. Come back, speak to my kids on the phone, the ones that don't live with me, So like I was saying earlier, I think when I was saying to people, I do have like a life on the side. My life revolves around talking to the people I love, taking my dog for a walk, and then a little bit of journalism. So who is actually fighting the amendment? As far as I know right now, it's only BT. I haven't seen anybody else fighting the amendment, BT and the CDF. But I mean, they're fighting a losing battle, aren't they? Because they don't have anyone on their side. So where does Ostalos Maere stand in all this? Fadzi, I don't know. Ostalos has spoken against 2030. He has on Twitter, etc. So, but I don't know if that position is his position as a person or the position of the office he holds. But Ostalos is a person with integrity. So I don't think he would support 2030. So Chief Nhlanhlamangwe Ndiweni is one of the greatest activists I've ever seen. Yeah, he's a good guy, Chief Ndiweni. He's a good guy. Nach says, show us the Porsche. My dog is what do you call it? She's a old English bulldog. So she is like, let me show you on my phone. Photos. Thing is, I could bring her here, but I think she could knock down that light. That was the thing. Let me see if I can show you on my phone. So, okay. I'll try and show you. I don't know if you can see it, but that's my dog. So, that's her. I'll find you another picture. I used to let her in my office. I think I've got a video of her in my office. Yeah, let me show you. So yeah, there you go. 11. What are you doing in my office and what do you want? I'm talking to you. What do you want here? So yeah. No, that was what you. So that's my dog. named Dorothy. Dorothy's a name. Sorry, my TikTok then put volume, but yeah, that's H is Maduku. Yeah. I'd forgotten Professor Maduku. He got beaten up for it. So I think Professor Maduku is also fighting it as well. I'm curious, what's Mchingu's position in all this? Is she affected all or negligible? The problem with my Mchingu is she's a bit old, 1, 2, she's got health problems, and 3, ZANU-PF is a bit of a chauvinistic party. So female leaders are really a tool. They're an accessory, but they're never respected. So she's not really, doesn't have really much sway at all. Word on Twitter is that those that spoke against 2013 Blauer are being abducted. Yeah, that I would have seen that coming. That's ZANU-PF for you. Definitely. Mo says, good dog. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, she's a lovely dog. Very peaceful. People say she's scary because she looks like a pit bull, but she isn't. She isn't a pit bull. She's just an old English bulldog. She's very chill. She's very good with my kids. Very good with me as well. Like, if I tell her to sit, she sits. She is very relaxed. Like, she's not aggressive at all. The only time I've seen her like really being upset was when some dog tried to like chase her and bite her legs. But even then, she just became wary of the dog itself. But she's very chill. She's a very good dog. It's been very helpful for me, especially with my health battles and stuff. What happened to Fortune Chassis? That guy looked like he could be a leader. Chassis was too principled and he tried to change too much too quick. Like what happened with Richard Mawomvet Net One, where you've got integrity, you show up in a place, you try to get rid of corruption. And his mistake was he fought that guy at Zesa. What was his name? Was it Gatti? Something like that. And that guy got him fired by ED. Same with Mawomva. At Net One is the same thing. Same as what's happened with Mswere and that lady at ZBC. Elietta? Yeah. When I saw him fighting her, I was like, this guy's going to lose his job. There are some people that are just too close to ED. They have influence. They don't have power, but they've got influence. So he's one of those. Vuli Chawangu got wind of the deal and stole the party to revenge on Chamisa betrayal. It could be. It could be because, yeah, that was something else. Theory, dissolving ZANU is the only way forward for them. Yeah, I think a good future for Zimbabwe doesn't have ZANU-PF in it. That's just how I feel. So, anyway, guys, we have been talking for 2 hours and 10 minutes. That is a long time. I have a headache. It was really great talking to you guys and taking your questions. If I missed anything, I'm sorry. You can always pop me a DM or you can send me an email. My email is maynard.manyoa@dagup.uk. You can always talk to me via email, or you can always send me like a DM here on Dagup. So thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. It was an absolute pleasure. I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, until next time, guys. On TikTok, bye-bye. I'm going to end with YouTube today. I'm going to give the YouTube guys a minute longer, but yeah. See you next time, guys. Cheers. All right, YouTube guys. Not YouTube. Yeah, YouTube guys. You guys are next. Right. All right, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this Q&A. I'll try and... I think I've all but figured out how to stream on YouTube and TikTok at the same time without having issues. So yeah. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. You guys have been a blast and a pleasure. So until I see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.